Hey, this is Vinny Valentino, and I'm here with my longtime friend and musical partner, Andres Ferrero.
Hey, this is Andres Ferrero. I'm the drummer on the Broadway show Hamilton.
I'm the guitar player with Steve Smith and Vital Information, and the musical director for the Drum Fantasy Camp and Play Along Tunes.
I have a deep love for guitars, and I'm grateful to be a part of this new show with Vinny.
The show is
called Guitars and Memoirs, so thanks for joining our show.
Talking all things guitar with the guitarists that make a difference. All right. Raul Midón, welcome to the program. We're so glad you are here with us, and looking very much forward to the to this interview.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's an honor to have you. There's a lot to talk about.
It's an honor to be here.
Amazing. So we want to know everything about you, and there's a lot of stuff. I mean, I've done a lot of homework on Raul, going back to when Richard Hammond pulled me into my little drum room at Hamilton and said, "You know who Raul Midón is?" And he said, "You got to play with this guy." And so I started my intensive study on you all the way back then. And there's just such an incredible life story to share. So we're going to condense it as much as we can and sort of start with your youth, how you got into music and your inspirations.
Well, I grew up with a father who was very musical. My mother died when I was very young, and so my dad was saddled with two blind twins. My brother, we were both born premature, and my dad had a lot of records in the house, and it was the 70s, so we had bongo drums and stuff, and one of the things we used to do was just play bongo drums for hours and hours. Just my brother, my dad, and I, and we would just play, not to a record, just play. And the rhythms would evolve and change. And that was one thing. And then we had a guitar in the house. And that was, I think if we had a grand piano, I probably would have played that. But there was a little guitar, a tiny little, it wasn't a requinto, but it was like the size of a requinto. It was a regular guitar. I think it was a Kent, it was called. Wow. My dad saw that I had an interest, and I would, pick it up and sort of bang on it and try to figure stuff out. And so he got me lessons when I was about 6 with the flamenco guitar player who was every summer he had a restaurant that he owned for a while. And every summer he would bring a flamenco troupe. Maria Benitez was a flamenco dancer who was based in Santa Fe in the summertime, and she would bring the whole troupe from New York, and they would play for the whole summer in this restaurant.
Wow.
Two shows a night, every night.
Jeez.
Except Sundays, I think, or something like that. It was, when I think about it from a gigging standpoint, that was a pretty heavy gig. 2 shows a night, 6 nights a week.
Wow. That's a great gig to have.
And so I started to take lessons, and it was all about technique, and it wasn't about theory at all. I mean, I learned everything by, put your first finger on the 2nd fret, 3rd string, and all that. I mean, it was but, I got into playing the guitar, and my dad had still has a very eclectic music library. So when we were, I don't know, 7, 8, 9, we were listening to John Cage and Harry Parch, and I mean, really crazy. Besides all the stuff that was around, and the first time I ever heard jazz, I'll never forget it. My brother and I were both into radio. We still are. I'm an amateur radio operator, and we used to have this little Mr. Microphone. And the Mr. Microphone was a little FM transmitter. In the 70s, they had this thing that they would sell, a Mr. Microphone. And then it was actually high fidelity FM. It was wideband hi-fi FM.
No kidding.
And it was, would go, I don't know, if it went 200 feet, I would be surprised. You know, it wasn't meant to. But of course, we already knew about radio, so we stuck an antenna on it, a piece of wire on the roof, and we made it go like a mile.
No kidding.
So you're talking about ham radio?
Well, I'm talking about, at this point, this is just an FM transmitter. We would find a clear frequency and start playing radio. And so we had, I think it might have been 4 records at the time. We had a Thin Lizzy record. We had an Eagles record. There was a couple of other ones that we had. I think Fly Like an Eagle, something else. Steve Miller, and we just kept playing the same old records over and over again, and it got, because basically what we would do was put the record on and then walk around to see how far the FM would get, and our whole goal in life was to try to get it to go further and further.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
And so eventually we got tired of the same old records, and we went into the forbidden record collection of my dad. He said, don't touch, he didn't want us to scratch the records or put our fingerprints on them or whatever. Right. And so we happened to pick this Charlie Parker record. And I remember putting it on and just being like, whoa. It was Charlie Parker and Miles Davis. I don't know exactly which record it was, but it was a bebop record, with Miles trying to keep up with Bird, basically. And I think it was, Max Roach and
Max's band, probably.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it was...
or Clifford Brown's band.
Yeah, and I'm not sure who was on bass. I don't know if it was Charlie Mingus. I don't know. Anyway, it was a Bird and Miles record. And my dad comes home and we're like, he comes home and we're we don't know whether, but we're so into this radio thing. And he goes, when did you guys get into mine? He was like, wow, you like this? I'm like, can you get more of those? And that's how I got introduced to jazz.
How old were you?
About 9.
Oh, okay. That's amazing.
Something like that.
Wow.
Whenever Fly Like an Eagle came out, that was I think the newest record that we got.
So what did your guitar teacher think at the time?
So my guitar teachers at that time were flamenco teachers.
Right.
So I wasn't really learning, or they weren't teaching me like how to play songs. It was all about playing scales and, and really I learned some flamenco, but it was all about technique, for them. It was all about me sort of learning how to play guitar. And so they would teach, they would make me do stuff like, stuff like that.
Wow.
And, scales and I think I learned sevillanas or something like that. But there was nothing to do with jazz or anything like that. I mean, that part and the guitar part was disconnected at that point.
Yeah.
At what part in that development did you were you able to move freely, having no vision? I mean, how you must have played so much to get used to the
I'm still, honestly, people say, oh, being blind makes you a better musician, which is crap. But
right.
It really is. I mean,
truth, man.
But I'm still getting used to it. Like if I play a different guitar with a slightly different scale, it's definitely, and I'm always, I'm always trying to, even if I don't play for, a few days, it's definitely a thing,
Yeah.
not being able to look at the fretboard. I think it's still a thing.
So for you, you can, in a sense, you seeing through touch. For me, I hear through touch because of the loss of my ear. And I would imagine that when you're playing, do you picture what the fretboard looks like when you're doing it, or?
I do, but like if I'm gonna play something in a certain key, and we're live, I always do this. Like when I play State of Mind, I do this to make sure that I don't, and that I'm here.
So you're counting the frets through feel. Where you're going
when I want to start.
Yes.
Once you start, then you're kind of in.
You're there.
You're in the thing, and then.
I've seen you use a couple of references. I've seen you play a lot, and I've seen you use a couple of references to find your way on the guitar. So
No doubt.
Go down. What's that?
No doubt, I said.
Yeah. So you'll go down to the correct me if I'm wrong. You'll go down to the nut of the guitar and then slide back up to find a G chord, for instance, or to find the third fret, and or like you just did for the B minor chord or B minor.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I realized when I started getting into more advanced stuff is, for me, one of the things that I did was to figure out how to play in every position, so that wherever I wound up, I would sort of know, where, because once you're playing, in the heat of battle, you can't really do that anymore. So I do it to make sure that I don't start in the wrong key,
Yeah.
But then, and I'm sure I talked to you about Andres. I'm sure I talked to you about the giant steps thing.
Yes, that's on our list of questions, actually.
Yeah.
So that was a big thing for me to get into this whole thing of, okay, if I wind up in this position, I know how to go from here to here, and I mean, it's an ongoing thing. Really.
Well, let's circle back to that in a minute, because I'm stuck on this. So you're 9 years old, you're playing a guitar, and you're figuring out. I've been blessed to play with some really incredible people, but I don't think I've ever met anyone that had the ears that you have. So at any point were you trying to catch up with your ears? Because you
Absolutely.
hear everything. Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember like figuring out Chick Corea voicings, like really just picking out on the piano. And I can remember, being at my teacher once I got to college and saying, what is this? What is that? Because I figured it out, but I had no idea. Just picking out one note at a time, and then of course he explains to me about a 9 and a flat 13, or a natural 13 actually. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was definitely, I heard. And one of the things that really helped me, because I don't have perfect pitch, believe it or not, intervals is the way that I deal with things.
Yeah.
So I got really, once I started getting into ear training, it was all about intervals, and being able to instantly hear, if the seventh, or a ninth, or whatever, even like really compound, that's a compound 7.
Yeah.
Wow.
That kind of thing.
So I'm sorry, I've been waiting for this moment for a long time, so I have like a million questions. But so you have the guitar.
Andres is like a kid in a candy shop.
I'm just so thrilled. But so you have the guitar thing, the bug. Then you have your voice, but then you also have this rhythmic thing. And my intro to Raul was the visual was a video of you playing at the Public Theater, playing
right.
Sunshine, and you're doing all this stuff, and you're talking to people, and the time is not wavering at all, and you're telling them there's no pedals up here, no effects pedals. I've watched it so many times I can recite it. And at what point did the voice come in? You say, "Oh, I want to sing," or the rhythmic thing. "Oh, I think I can take."
Well,
my
the
left
voice
hand.
thing came in very quickly and right in with the guitar thing. I mean, I've always been somebody who sang, and so I remember figuring out. You can tell what era this was. I think that was Volver, Volver. Este amor apasionado. Na, 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 na. Like that kind of thing. And that was like one of the tunes that I learned, one of the first tunes I ever learned.
Wow.
I think Lo Mucho Que Te Quiero.
Boleros.
Believe me when I... No. This is... I don't even know how much, if this... Believe me when I say how much much I love you. You know, something like that. It was one of those kind of deals.
Wow. Amazing. So the vocal thing came right in, and then at what point did you decide, well, I have the dexterity to play a bass, a tumbao with my left hand, and with my right hand play bongos, and then, oh, you know what, I can actually simulate a trumpet pretty damn good.
Honestly, that happened way into me being in New York.
Okay.
Like I was in, you know, that happened, and I'll tell you why. Because, you know, I'd been playing solo for a while, and, you know, I'd been playing State of Mind and all that, and then I met Richard freaking Bona. And so, you know, we would do this thing with his band, and we toured, and then we would each do a solo piece. And I never met anybody that kicked my ass solo until Richard.
Yeah, he's something else.
He is just, between him and his looping pedals and his singing and his playing and his virtuosic playing on the bass, and it was just like, holy crap, you know.
Yeah. You know, I had a similar experience. I played with him at a flamenco restaurant, and he joined my trio. This was early, I can't remember exactly when it was.
Maybe late 90s?
Yeah, something like that. He was subbing for Jeff Andrews at first, and he loved the tunes and was playing. And I had no idea that he sang. I had no idea he did all this other stuff. But he would pick up my guitar, and he would play my guitar, and he would ask me how much I wanted for it. He'd say, "How much do you want for this, man? This is a great guitar." And I'd be like, "This guy plays guitar," and you know, he would say, "Come to the gig I have on Thursday night." So then I'd go to the gig and found out, wait a minute, this guy sings too.
Yeah.
But he was a math teacher, wasn't he? He was discovered he was a math teacher, but he was playing guitar, and then he worked his way in.
I didn't hear that either. I mean, he came up in his village in
Cameroon.
Yeah. And he I remember he would always say his grandfather taught him how to play. His parents were not into him being a musician at all, from what he told me.
Oh, wow.
And his grandfather would always say to people, "Why are you trying to get for free the only thing I'm selling?" You know, that was what he would always say.
That would never end.
Yeah, exactly.
I worked with him with Hector Martignon in the late 90s. Quite a bit, actually. And I remember there was a story about him being a teacher, and they discovered him, but at the time he was playing guitar. And then
it could be. I mean, you know, it's interesting because one of the things that we used to play Teen Town with Richard's band.
Yeah.
At some just ridiculous tempo, right? And there was one night when he played some crazy outside and I'm like, and I tried to figure out whether he is theoretical or not, or like how his brain works, and I never really figured it out. But the other thing, I said, "Richard, how are you doing that?" And he goes, "Well, I use 3 fingers instead of 2. And it literally made me change my technique. So I use the 3 fingers now too because of Richard.
Oh my God. That's amazing. Huh. Incredible. Okay, so we go from, you were 9 years old. Now fast forward and take us to college. Where did you go to college?
I went to University of Miami, and I was my teachers in high school were flamenco, and then I also had classical teachers. And they, I learned some lute pieces. I think I learned like that Renaissance kind of lute thing where you tune the E down to a D and you play. And so I had really no jazz repertoire when I came out of high school. I didn't know any tunes. I loved jazz. I was listening to it, but I couldn't. So when I went to audition, they said, well, I'll tell you what, you're in the classical program, and after 2 semesters, you can re-audition if you want to get into the jazz program. So I took lessons every week privately, which I paid for out of my own pocket. And my friend drove me there was a guitar player in Miami named Doug Mayer, who was a grad assistant at the time. And so he started to teach me theory. And I re-auditioned, and I got into the jazz program. And then I had Randall Dallahan every week, and it was a crash course in everything about, the guitar and theory and voicings and just, I also should say I did have one other teacher in high school but I didn't have him for very long, Bruce Dunlop, who is an amazing guitar player.
Absolutely.
And he kind of got me going, at least started a little bit. And he made me do this thing where I did, he would take a scale and break it down so he'd say, okay, play 1-4-5 through the major scale. Then play 1-3-5, which is triads. Then play 1-2-5 through the scale. Then 1-2-4 through the scale. 1-2-5 through the scale. It's kind of a crazy thing, but it gets you aware of all these weird voicing possibilities on the guitar.
That's amazing. Well, before we get too deep into the technique, because I know Vinny has some incredible questions about your technique. I've always been influenced by everyone but drummers. And I've made a living playing the drums, but I've always been in love with guitar because that's my first instrument, my first love. You're one of those people that I think is influenced by so many different people, because when you sing, you do the vocal trumpet thing, you play percussion, and you play guitar. But who led your influence? What instrument led your influence?
Definitely drums for a while. I actually played.
Who was your biggest?
Man, I gotta say, when I was young, I was really into Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
I was into John Bonham, and you know what I was into? I was into that bass drum thing he would do. Mike turns in today. I was into that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's all that Carmen Appice stuff that he got. He got all that from Carmen.
Yeah, and then of course all the flamenco that I was listening to every night. It was just a rhythmic, a rhythmic paradise. I mean, the dancers are doing one thing, and the thing,
yeah, bulerías.
It was all that. It was just all of this counter rhythm and stuff going on, and it was quite a rhythmic lesson. And then I got into the pianos. I got into Chick. I was really into Chick. I still am. I remember going to see Chick Corea with a string quartet. And I just thought it was the most amazing, with Gary Burton and the string quartet.
Oh, wow.
And at the Palo Solari, which was this amphitheater in Santa Fe, outdoor amphitheater.
Wow.
I'm really a lot influenced by we're just talking about the instrumental stuff. The songwriting thing's a whole other thing. But the Brazilian, the crazy Hermeto Pascoal and Gilberto Gismonte thing, just so creative and so playful, I guess.
Yeah.
I could just go on. As far as songwriting, I went through a huge Dylan phase where I was just fascinated with Dylan and how many rhymes he could put together.
Incredible with Dylan. How did you feel when he went from acoustic to electric for that brief little moment?
I mean, I just loved it all, honestly. I didn't, I wasn't, I was more of a jazz purist. Once I got into songwriting, I didn't care what they did as far as the music goes. I just loved as far as Dylan goes, I loved the electric stuff. I loved the acoustic stuff. I loved everything. James Taylor, huge James Taylor fan. You can tell when I grew up. Joni Mitchell.
All the greatest songwriters.
Yeah.
And storytellers. That's where it starts for me.
And then of course I started to get fascinated by the guys that wrote all the standards. Cole Porter and Ira Gershwin, Rodgers and Hart, Sammy Cahn.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that Laura lyric isn't. I always go back to that. Laura is a face in the misty light, footsteps that you hear down the hall, a laugh that floats on a summer night that you could never quite recall. Get the hell out of here. That's amazing. That's an amazing lyric.
And how about Bernstein? Some Other Time. That's an incredible lyric.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much to be influenced by. That's why it's kind of overwhelming, because today we have access to everything that's ever been recorded, and there's so much that sometimes it's hard to listen to new music,
Of course. Yeah. So at one point you were saying that maybe you played the drums, and having sat behind you a couple of times, I know that there's a lot of rhythm in you. So did you sit and play the drum set as well as all the percussion stuff?
I actually played the drum set in a band for a little while. I played in a country band.
So amazing.
And it was, I remember really getting into, there was two tunes that I remember playing on drums. One was the Can't You See What This Woman Is Doing to Me? And and I remember really getting into that kick drum being right in with the bass. And the other tune was Looking for Love.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Just really getting locked into the bass, kick drum and bass being together. The story that I will tell you though is when I realized that I wasn't going to be playing drums was we were out in a mall. I was maybe 14 or something, and we were playing Peggy Sue, right? And Peggy Sue's got that tom thing with Peggy Sue,
right?
And the kick drum pedal goes out.
Oh.
And I'm like, I had no clue, not a clue of how to fix it.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the gig, I don't remember if somebody had set the drums up for me before, but I had to move the drums at the end of the gig.
Holy crap.
Wow.
And I was like, nah.
That would cinch it for me.
Well, for a blind guy, it's just,
Well, so Raul, Vinny and I have known each other for over 20 years. I came to New York from Rochester, no clue what I was doing, went to Manhattan School, and somehow by the grace of God, I met him, and I had the opportunity to play with him.
Mm-hmm.
And without exception, one of the finest guitar players I've ever worked with. About a year ago, maybe to the date, close to it, Vinny had a stroke, and he was on tour with Steve Smith. So he's a survivor like you and I of life and the things that have happened to us medically. But he has some incredible stories about State of Mind. That tune somehow has touched so many people all over the world, and I've talked to a lot of people about it, and I want him to tell you a little bit about his story.
Please, because that came out of adversity too. I'll tell you that, but go ahead and tell me first what.
Yeah, I mean, it was a big realization for me that after the stroke, I couldn't play things that were not only mine tunes, but tunes that I had written. But I tried a lot of things, and one of them was State of Mind. So I had done a series for the Collective Music School called Guitar Grooves, and we put together 50 1-minute shots for Instagram, and one of the ones that got the most hits was me doing my interpretation of your State of Mind. And I didn't go into detail in terms of copying it, but I felt like I had it pretty well together. Right. And, I may not have gotten all the nuances, but, you can go back to that video and I can see it. But I couldn't play that anymore, man. And it was like, and I was trying to figure out why, and, but, slowly but surely, it started to come back, and putting the pieces back together.
And did you feel like you had to use a different part of your brain, like you had to do a different kind of learning?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Like they say that you're not going to reach the same goals by trying the same methods, and I did try. I tried the same way. I'm still experimenting with the right hand technique, with my right hand technique, because the right side was affected. But and then again, I kept on asking my therapist. I'd say, listen to this. For instance, the Beatles' Blackbird.
Right.
I've known that for, I don't know how many years, but I could pull that out at any point and play it for people, and it was gone. It was like everything else. It was just gone. And I was saying, wait a minute, man, is this just in my head, or is this the right hand? I feel like I can tell you where the chords should be. How come I can't play it? And slowly but surely, she, deciphered why it was, whether it was cognitive or whether it was physical. And little by little, I started to make those connections. And I even imagine those connections. That's the beauty about music. And I would say, more so than anything else, you can wake up in the morning and absolutely learn something new about what you're doing. If you want to work on Bach, you can learn so much. I mean, it's incredible.
Oh, it's endless. It's completely endless. Yeah.
And so, put that with the process, and now I look at it like, it's just another step in my development, and I'm making these connections, and it's called neuroplasticity, which I'm sure you've heard about. And,
yeah, absolutely.
And making those connections and imagining those connections are being made. I can visualize them in my brain.
Well, do you do something? Sometimes I do this where if you can't practice, like if you're on a flight for a long time and you want to try to work on something, you work on it in your head. Like you feel the instrument in your hand and you try to like be there, even though you're not really playing it, but you're kind of going through in your head everything that you would be doing.
Yeah, like those flights to Japan will get in 6 hours. And yeah, definitely. And I've been doing all of that, and but I would say, for me, watching you play, watching your right hand technique has been not only inspiration before the stroke, but also after the stroke, and helping me conceptualize a different way. And
well, that tune is really it is right hand, but it's also very left hand, because what you're sort of doing, it's kind of like playing drums on the guitar.
Right.
So there's a lot of left hand going on there too.
Yeah. Can you slow it down even more?
So that's a left
So
hand
you're
thing.
getting percussive sounds. Yeah. You're getting percussive sounds like Stanley Jordan on the left hand.
And that's the other thing. So it's I'm doing a bounce, basically just with the left hand.
Oh wow, it's really detailed.
And this is always on TV. I remember I was terrified that I would miss that. You know, wake up in the morning and I turn the pages, and every now and then I would.
But you didn't miss it on Letterman.
No, but I was terrified.
Oh man, I can't imagine.
I was terrified. And not only that, it was cold as hell. Have you guys done Letterman? He kept it at 48 degrees there.
I haven't done Letterman, but I've done a bunch of the other ones. And
48. It was cold.
Why? So cold.
Because he didn't want the audience to go to sleep. That's what
Colbert's the same way. I did Andrea Bocelli. I played with him, and so cold. I had gloves on.
Well, you know what? I mean, the thing is too is you gotta like. They told me, they said you better go and tune your instrument because I have my dressing room kind of warm. They said, man, if you go out there, your guitar's going to go out of tune.
Tune again. Well, it's incredible to hear you both talk about this stuff. I love you both so much. So to hear you both speak about something that, I can relate to on some level, having had a horrible car accident. But it's incredible to see Vinny's progress. Because he was on tour with Steve Smith with Vital Information, and they were doing, just gig after gig. And Vinny does a lot of
that's not easy music either.
No, it's hard as shit, and he writes a lot of it. Beep. Sorry. Wow. And so Vinny does a lot of the Indian vocal. Is it conical?
Yeah.
Conical with Steve, but they do it unison. So if you get a check, I'll send you the links for it.
Yeah, you know how amazing. I know about Vital Information? I listened to this internet radio station called Soma FM. That's where I first heard it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's an internet station called Soma FM, and they got a bunch of different channels, and there's a channel called Sonic Universe, and that's where they play Vital Information.
Wow.
Well, it's incredible to hear you guys talk about it, and to hear a little bit about the technique of what went in to that song. And I can tell you, having sat behind you to play that tune, that song somehow made it onto my wife's iPod, and she used to teach a dance class before we ever met using that song.
Wow.
And then that song was used as a sound check for Book of Mormon when I was on tour. I was on tour for 2 years straight.
Wow.
And they used that to get the sound levels in all of the theaters that we were in.
Well, I'll tell you another story about that song. That song happened because it was the first time that I lost my voice in New York. And I couldn't sing. And I was like,
wow.
I had this, it ended up being that I had to get surgery on my voice, which was really, really heavy duty. Yeah. But we had gotten to New York, and I had done some crazy bunch of gigs in a row, and I sometimes as a singer, you kind of strain your voice a little, you wake up in the morning, and it goes away by the end of the day or maybe the next day, and it wasn't going away. And so it was like, I was absolutely mortified because here we were in New York. We had moved here for me to do this thing, and I didn't want to tell anybody, and it was just, and I started thinking about maybe I'm just going to have to be really badass guitar player. And so that's how that song came about, because I couldn't sing, so I was like trying to figure out something I could do on guitar,
Well, I think it's a perfect segue to get you to play a song for us. So if you want to play that song, that's great. Sure. If you want to play a different one, let's have a moment. And I'm going to mute you here on my end.
Yeah.
or mute myself. I
Go
mean,
for
not
it.
you.
Used to sit and worry about the future. Worrying about the future don't change the past. Used to think tomorrow would be better, but now I know that I'm doing the best that I can. I'm just a man trying to find the reasons why I stand. Took some time to realize that I wanna be rich, I wanna be happy, and live inside a love that shines bright enough to last a lifetime. I wanna be rich, more than a fantasy, ride the winds and climb, 'cause it's all a state of mind. Wake up in the morning and I turn the pages. Don't understand what's going down. Everybody's acting so outrageous. It's gonna take a lot of love to turn things around, and I'm just a man trying to find the reasons why I stand. Took some time to realize that I am what I am, and I wanna be rich, I wanna be happy, and live inside a love that shines bright up to last a lifetime. I wanna be rich, more than a fantasy, ride the winds and climb, 'cause it's all state of mind. Talking about going to heaven, grab a little bit of heaven right here on earth. Trouble times lead to healing times. I was sad and I'm feeling fine. It's a taking and a giving that makes this life worth living. Makes this life worth living. I wanna be rich, I wanna be happy, and live inside a love that shines bright enough to last a lifetime. I wanna be rich, more than a fantasy, ride the winds and climb. Ride the winds and climb. Ride the winds and climb. Because it's all a state of mind.